Welcome to the Why Not podcast with me, Chrissy Hawkins. In a world where everybody always asks you why, I'm here to ask why not. I'm going to do that by breaking down the mindsets of guests and my own to figure out what makes people say, why not? Hi guys, welcome back to Why Not. So today I just wanted to talk all about our core. So people may think the core is something different than it actually is. So I decided to describe what our core is, what it does, how you can train it, and how to improve bracing it or getting the most out of core training in regards to your overall training. So I hope you find this interesting and maybe you learn a few things. I tried not to get too technical on the muscles because that's kind of more my buzz than anything. But as ever guys, I just want you to sit back and relax or walk and listen. But here is my episode all about the core. Hi guys, welcome back to Why Not. So back on a solo episode today, and I wanted to talk all about your core today. So I'm sure we've all heard the term engage your core, or people talking about their core, and I just wanted to talk a bit about it, talk about maybe some things that people may not realise about their core and different things to do with training the core and how to engage it and all of that kind of stuff. So let's start off first with what is your core? Now, I think when people think about their core, they just think about their ab muscles. Now, the ab muscles are part of the core, however, they are not all of your core. Your core is actually made up of a lot of groups of muscles, and it does actually span into your hips, and your glutes are actually part of your core. So we have our glutes, which is our butt. There's three muscles in the glutes: glute minimus, medius and maximus. Maximus is the big one we can see. Medius and minimus are actually on the sides, and they do a lot of kind of rotation work and abduction work with your leg. Okay, so they're the lesser big muscles, but they're also part of your core. What else part of your core? Your lower back muscles that are opposite your abdominals. So we're talking about our erector spinae and some of the muscles around there. Don't worry, you don't need to remember these muscles, just know where they are. Our hip flexor muscles are all part of our core as well. So there are more muscles that are part of the core. Now your abs aren't just the six muscles you see in the six pack. We also have our obliques down the side. We have our transverse and our rectus abdominis. Our transverse is actually deep muscle that no matter how much you train it, you're never going to see it, and rectus is the one that shows your six pack. So they are several other muscles involved in your core. Also, your diaphragm is part of your core as well. It's in that area. So if anyone doesn't know what the diaphragm is, it is a muscle that helps your lungs inflate and deflate. So that's part of your core. And another thing to remember is our core has multiple functions, so stability being one of them. So obviously it's very important. It's kind of the center of your body, the core if you will, and it helps us keep stable and balanced while doing day-to-day things. It also supports your back and your spine when moving. So obviously your spine has lots of muscles around it. It's meant to bend and flex, not just be rigid all the time. And these muscles around there help support it. It's involved in breathing as well, like I mentioned with the diaphragm. The diaphragm's not the only muscle that helps you breathe. A lot of your back muscles are also involved in respiration or breathing. And so that's another thing that's involved in. Movement obviously is one of them that we do, because obviously we can move all those muscles. And transfer of energy, so it can also help with the transfer of energy between your upper and lower body, and even through exercises. So the reason we are told a lot of time when we're exercising to brace our core is to give yourself a stable base to push through and transfer the energy through. If you have a strong core when you're twisting or kicking something in a sport or throwing something, this helps with the transfer of energy and make it a lot stronger than if you were just throwing through your arm, because you're putting your whole body behind it by engaging your core, if that makes sense. So that's another thing that it's very important with. And a last one that you may not have ever thought about is continence. Your core is involved in that, so it helps you stop from leaking, if that makes sense. And another one of the muscles that are involved in that is your pelvic floor. That's also part of your core. So that is obviously women who have had children need to strengthen that after. Not saying that they're incontinent after, but it does help having to re-strengthen the core. I've heard some stories about how it can make certain things more difficult. I do not want to know myself, but that's another thing there that it can actually be involved in. So here we are seeing that, like, first off, our core is not just our abs, and secondly, our core does so many things other than makes us have a six-pack. One misconception I think people have is that if you have a strong core, you have a six-pack. No, that's nothing to do with it. Six-pack levels are completely dependent on body fat levels. Sorry, not six-pack levels. Whether or not you have a six-pack is completely dependent on your body fat levels. So that is why you may see, for instance, not that I'm saying look at young teen lads, but a lot of young teen lads without doing any exercise have six-pack. The reason being is they just have a low body fat level. Again, when you're older, it's harder to get to that. If you're a woman, it's very hard to get to those low body fat levels and maintain healthy bodily functions. By that I mean your hormones. When we get to a certain body fat level, it can mess with our hormones as our body kind of switches off things like our menstrual cycle. So for women, it's less likely to see a six-pack unless maybe they're sitting on stage, and again, that is lean. There's plenty of female stage athletes who wouldn't have done ab work or core work and still had a six-pack stepping on stage because they've either learned to brace their core during lifts, which is very important, as I said, in that transfer of energy, or the more likely one, their body fat is just so low that they can see their ab muscles now. I'm not saying they don't have trained abs. I'm just saying it doesn't equal a six-pack training your abs. And training your core is not just doing ab work. So the reason our core is so important and what it is made up of, and these muscles, our muscles have two types of fibers, okay? So there's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is slow twitch muscles and type 2 is fast twitch muscles. So think of it this way: if you're running a marathon, you're going to rely mostly on your slow twitch muscles. So these muscles are fueled by oxygen and fat, okay? Now, this means they can run for long periods of time. Our type 2 muscle fibers are your fast twitch muscles. So think sprint, an explosive lift, this kind of thing. That's what they're recruited for. They run on a completely different system, and this system is only able to keep going for a couple of seconds. Like, we're talking very short periods of time, okay? Whereas your type 1 muscles can, like that, run a marathon, go for hours. They're the type of muscles, some of them are switched on all the time, and that's what a lot what our core is built up of. Because it's involved in stability and just like carrying our frame, a lot of it is switched on all of the time, and that means they need to be able to function all the time. So there's a lot of blood vessels, they're very dark tissue in the muscles, and that's because it's got a constant supply of blood bringing oxygen. So if anyone doesn't know that, our blood supply transfers oxygen all around the body. So this needs, the more blood vessels, the more blood that a muscle can take, the more it can function, because it's got a constant supply of oxygen. Whereas the slow twitch muscles have a lot less blood flow to them because they're only short term, and this makes our muscles able to function all of the time. So every time you're doing something, your core muscles are engaged. Basically, you're sitting up, they're holding you up. You're breathing, you're sleeping, you're breathing. They're all here. It's all constantly firing. So this is really important, and that's why it needs blood flow all the time. Now, the next thing to think about is, when it comes to engaging our core, how do we engage our core? A lot of people will be able to do ab exercises, but not necessarily engaging their core. Might be doing lifts and heavy lifts and stuff like that and not engaging their core. And you will find if you learn to engage your core properly, you can actually transfer more energy. So you've got this nice stable base. So if you're doing a heavy bench or a heavy squat or a deadlift, if you can put your core into it, you'll get a better explosive lift, you can lift heavier. Whereas if it's not engaged and switched on, it's very hard to keep yourself controlled in that manner that you can get the power through and transfer the power. And again, this comes as well when we're doing balance work or any type of planks and stuff like that. These kind of things, being able to engage your core makes them kind of easier, not easier to do I suppose, but more comfortable, less painful. You probably disagree with me on that point. But anyway, engaging your core. How do you do it? Now, a lot of people before would have just sucked their belly button in or held their breath. And that kind of doesn't really do the job, because, how are you supposed to keep functioning through, say for instance, if you suck your stomach in or suck your belly in and you want to lift, it's very hard to breathe through your lifts and suck your breath in. I don't know how you can do that. Can you do that? Possibly. It's really, really difficult. But to keep that stable and be able to hold your breath is going to be very, very difficult. So what do? What we want to do is imagine someone is going to punch you in the stomach. So if you find this difficult to imagine, think about what you would do if someone's going to hit you in the arm. You tense your arm, you squeeze your arm, you brace for the impact. Okay? Well, this is the exact same thing we do with our core. We brace as if someone's going to hit us. Tense up, but you can still breathe through it. So you have that tense core, and now you can breathe. Exhale, breathe. Inhale, breathe through each lift. Very, very important to think about this. And I know as well from experience, people forget to breathe when they're lifting. I know this because about 3 rounds in, they are going red in the face, or 3 reps in, and you have to remind people to breathe regularly. This is hard when you're starting out. This is not you. This means nothing wrong with you. I do this myself. I have had this issue. I now know, especially when you're lifting heavy, if the case is you're going to get crushed by a bar, you tend to breathe, because if you hold your breath, you're going to run out of the oxygen in the muscles, and the power is not going to be, you're not going to be able to generate that power. Whereas if you breathe through each one, you'll be able, breathe through each rep. The saying is exhale on the exertion, exhale on the effort. So to put in context, if you are doing a bench press, your effort is to press up. So you inhale as you bring the bar to your chest or the dumbbells to your chest, and exhale, press up. And inhale down, exhale, press up. You can do this with your core engaged. You engage that core, inhale down, exhale, power up. And it really makes a difference to your lifts if you breathe every time, because every round you're getting some oxygen back into the muscles. And just for anyone who wants to know, as I was describing all this, I was doing all the movements despite the fact that this is a podcast and no one can see me. So I found that really amusing, and I thought I'd tell you so. Side note, back to what I was saying. So with the core, like that, we want to brace like something's coming to hit us. There is another really funny way of describing a way of bracing your core. So you may have heard in Pilates stuff, imagine you're peeing and trying to stop peeing. And so basically, imagine you're peeing, try to cut off the peeing. Do you know what I mean? Stop mid-flow. That's the way I want to say it. That is going to help you engage your core, basically engage your pelvic floor, stuff like that. That it might be a little bit harder to engage. And the other one I've heard, I'm going to warn you in advance, this is a bit filthy, and this is apparently only for women. I heard this, thank you Kim Constable for this one. And it's an image that you will never get from your brain, but basically imagine you are trying to suck a smoothie up through your vagina. Yes, I said that. That's exactly what I said there. Imagine you're trying to suck a smoothie up through that. It's got a straw and you're trying to pull it up through there. And if you tell me your core doesn't feel engaged or your abs don't feel engaged after doing this, that's okay. But if you can do that without laughing, because trying to do it the first few times and imagining it is quite amusing. She went into big detail when she said it before, but I'm just going to leave it on that short spot. And hopefully you're not listening to this out loud around people who shouldn't hear it. But yeah, really, really good one. I swear to God, I vouch for her. It worked really well as an imagery thing. But again, you can just go with imagine someone's going to punch you. Another thing to remember, strengthening your core is not doing the likes of sit-ups, that kind of thing, which is kind of your glamour muscle training, like the things we're all told to do our six-pack. As I said, this isn't your six-pack. Your core is a whole load of group of muscles, and those kind of exercises aren't going to be the ones that are going to strengthen your core. We want to do these kind of stabilizing exercises. So your plank, one thing I will always say is if you're doing a plank, here's a way to make sure you're doing a plank really well, is if you start the plank from the ground. So a lot of people go down into a plank, but if you start with your stomach on the ground, pull your belly in, so brace that belly like you're going to be punched, and then lift up into your plank, it's going to be 10 times worse. And I mean that in that your muscles are engaged and ready to go, and it's a lot harder to do the plank when you do it this way, because a lot of people can sit in a plank normally, you just sit down into it, but if you try and do it this way, it's going to be a lot harder, I guarantee you. This is the kind of thing we want to do. These are the kind of exercises we want to do to strengthen our core, because your plank is not just your abs, you're using your whole body in a hold if you're doing it right. Again, we've got the likes of our side planks and these kind of holding exercises. Another exercise that you may not realize is also a core exercise is a glute bridge. Now I'm not taking a resisted one, but even starting in low body weight positions strengthen the glutes. As I said, they're a core muscle, so we want to be able to strengthen them, bring them up, lower them down. This is another one of our, I think this kind of shows you as well that's a lot more as well to the core. Like, it's not just sit-ups and crunches. In fact, they're not really great, but it's all those exercises where we're holding. Stabilizing exercises can be great as well, so you can grab the likes of a TRX or a fit ball or a Bosu ball, but if you listen to my previous episode, you will know, hopefully, never to do a squat standing on the platform of a Bosu ball. Please don't do that unless you want to get a serious injury. Not necessary. And also, it's not necessary for you to do anything involving kind of leg work on an unstable surface, because it's more dangerous than it's worth. So just putting that in there before that, because I have mentioned the Bosu ball. Just disclaimer, if you're not sure, listen to my episode with Jordan Syatt. He will tell you exactly why you shouldn't do it on a Bosu ball. Now, what you can do is upper body exercises, totally fine. Core exercises, say for instance you want to do a plank on them, make sure you are okay in control of this too, okay? Especially with the fit ball or the Bosu ball, because Bosu ball not so much, but the fit ball can roll away, so you don't want to face plant. So don't do it unless you think you're comfortable doing it and you feel like you can control it. You can do a plank with your arms on the ball, you can do your plank with your legs on the ball. Same thing happens with a TRX. A TRX knocks you off balance a lot. So while you are doing bodyweight exercise, it makes you stabilize your core. So this works well for doing core exercises, but even the likes of upper body exercises, like your chest press, TRX chest press, or your TRX row. And it's really important with these kind of exercises that we keep a strong, stable core. So when we come down into these exercises, we don't want to drop our hips. You drop your hips, your core is not engaged. You're falling into it and falling back. So we use these as a marker to know we're a nice straight line, strong in whatever angle we're at, lower down and back up. If you've ever done any of these exercises, you'll understand. If you haven't, this probably won't make as much sense. You can also do the likes of planks and different variations of planks on a TRX with your feet in the stirrups. Make sure with this, if you are doing it, to add extra stabilization. Either one, make sure that the length of the strap is mid-calf length. You don't want it too high or too low, because it's going to put pressure on your back. And secondly, if you are not strong enough to hold yourself up and your back is dipping, you need to do it back on the ground first, because like that, you are actually going to cause yourself more back issues than do any help. And I know we always want to progress and do the harder exercises, but we want to get them right on the ground first before we go into the harder version of everything and injure ourselves. So it's really, really important. Now, TRX can be very helpful for, as well, single leg exercises, because it gives you a counterbalance to help you stay upright if you don't have the balance yourself. And then you can build up to doing it without it. So that's the likes of, I say, single leg lunges or pistol squats, which is a single leg squat. You can practice them on the TRX and it'll help you get your balance. Again, because these are single leg movements, it's going to cause a lot more stabilization, a lot more balance. Single leg exercises are great for helping develop that kind of thing, your balance and stuff. But really, unless you have serious balance issues, you don't really need to do it. Or, you know, you're trying to rehab from an injury, or you have a specific sport where you spend a lot of time on one leg and you need it to be strong and stable, it's not necessary. So, you know, as far as it goes from the likes of your normal lunges and stuff like that, absolutely fine. But if you're general population, you don't really need to be doing crazy single leg stuff. Sometimes it's great for stability, as I said, but nothing mental, okay? That makes sense. Some of the stuff you see online, that's what I'm talking about. But yeah, so they are like some of the things that you can use to help improve your core strength and stability, what your core actually is, and what it's not. And I hope these things help you learn a little bit more about your core, make you understand that it does a lot more than you think, and that, again, it's not just those glamour muscles, it is a whole area and loads of muscles made up. Like, even in these groups of muscles, there's muscle groups within muscle groups, and it's very complex and it's really interesting, for me anyway. I'll be all day listening out the muscles. I hope you found this interesting. I hope this gave you a little bit more understanding of your core and understanding how it works, and that it's not just your six pack. It's not just six pack doesn't mean you have a strong core. There's so many people with incredibly strong cores who you wouldn't realize because they are not ripped, shredded. I'm doing that in air quotes, by the way, because again, that doesn't mean health. I've done a whole podcast on that. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope this little anatomy lesson was helpful. If you do have any questions about it, feel free to drop me a message. I love talking about stuff like this. If there's anything else you'd like me to talk about, do let me know. And as ever, guys, you will find me on Instagram. It's Chrissy H Fitness. You'll also find me on TikTok at Chrissy H Fitness. I also have my equestrian page. So it's on Instagram, it's at @stronginthesaddle_. And on TikTok, it's just at @stronginthesaddle. And I think that's all to equestrian fitness. So I think that's why it would be really, really helpful to listen to this podcast as well if you're interested in equestrian fitness, because balance is very important. Anyone knows who's been trying to set a horse, try to rocket launch them off them, or beat an idiot, stuff like that. It's very important to have a strong core to help yourself stay on. But anyway, I'm going to stop talking now, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. So do drop me a review, let me know how you found it, and thanks again for joining me. Thank you again for listening to the Why Not podcast. It really means a lot that you are listening in, and I would love if you could please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or subscribe on Spotify. And always, I'd love to hear feedback personally, so if you do want to leave me a message and let me know how you found the podcast, please do.